Good morning and welcome to Chapter 4, Lesson 3 on succession. Our goal is to describe the changes in ecosystems resulting from seasonal variations, climate change, and succession. The objectives are to describe how ecosystems recover from a disturbance and compare succession after a natural disturbance with succession after humans caused disturbance. So think about it. In 1883, the volcanic island of Krakatoa in the Indian Ocean was blown to pieces by an eruption. The tiny island that remained was completely barren. Everything was killed on it. All life was killed on it, for the most part. There's always some little bacteria. Within 2 years, though, grasses were growing. 14 years later, there were 49 plant species, along with lizards, birds, bats, and insects. And by 1929, a forest containing 300 plant species had grown. Today, the island is blanketed by mature rainforests. So how did the island ecosystem recover so quickly? So our first objective is to describe how ecosystems recover from a disturbance. Ecological succession is a series of more or less predictable changes that occur in a community over time. Ecosystems change over time, especially after disturbances, such as some species die out and new species move in. Over the course of succession, the number of different species present typically increases. Volcanic explosions can create new land or sterilize existing areas. Retreating glaciers can have the same effect, leaving only exposed bare rock behind them. Succession that begins in an area with no remnants of the older community is called primary succession. For example, in Glacier Bay, Alaska, the retreating glacier exposed barren rock, primary succession. There's no remnants of the older community. It's all new. Over the course of more than 100 years, a series of changes has led to the hemlock and spruce forests currently found in the area. Changes in this community will continue for centuries. The first species to colonize barren areas is called the pioneer species. That makes sense. One ecological pioneer that grows on barren rock is lichen, a mutualistic symbiosis between a fungus and an algae. Over time, lichens convert or fix atmospheric nitrogen into useful forms of other organisms, break down rock, and add organic material to form soil. Certain grasses, like those that colonized Krakatoa early on, are also pioneer species. Sometimes existing communities are not completely destroyed by disturbances. In these situations, secondary succession occurs. Secondary succession proceeds faster, as you could imagine, than primary succession, in part because soil survives the disturbances. And as a result, new and surviving vegetation can grow back rapidly. Secondary succession often follows a wildfire, a hurricane, or some other kind of natural disturbance. We think of these events as disasters, but many species are adapted to them. Although forest fires kill some trees, for example, other trees are spared, and fire can stimulate their seeds to germinate. Secondary succession can also follow human activities like logging and farming. This series shows secondary succession, this picture right here, taking place in abandoned fields in the Carolinas Piedmont. Over the last century, these fields have passed through several stages and matured into oak forest. Changes will continue for years to come also. So our objective 1 is to describe how ecosystems recover from a disturbance. You should know ecosystems change over time, especially after disturbances, as some species died out and more species move in. Moving on to our quick lecture today, objective 2. Compare succession after a natural disturbance with succession after a human-caused disturbance. So you can probably imagine what we're going to be talking about here, what's going to happen. Ecologists used to think that succession in a given area always proceeds through the same stages to produce a specific and stable climax community. But recent studies, however, have shown that succession doesn't always follow the same path, and that climax communities are not always uniform and stable. Secondary succession in healthy ecosystems following natural disturbances often reproduces the original climax community. Healthy coral reefs and tropical rainforests often recover from storms, and healthy temperate forests and grasslands recover from fires. However, Detailed studies show that some climax communities are not uniform. Often they have areas in varying stages of secondary succession, following multiple disturbances that took place at different times. Some climax communities are disturbed so often that they can't really be called stable. Succession after human-caused disturbances. Okay, we're a mess, us humans, and we make a mess. Researchers who swarmed over Mount St. Helens, after it erupted in 1980, might also have studied Karakatu, for example. On both Mount St. Helens and Karakatu, primary succession proceeded through predictable stages. The first plants and animals that arrived had seeds, spores, or adult stages that traveled over long distances. Hardy pioneer species helped stabilize loose volcanic debris, enabling later species to take hold. Historical studies in Karakatu and ongoing studies on Mount St. Helens, this is the picture of Mount St. Helens, by the way, confirm that early stages of primary succession, as you can see here, are slow, and that chance can play a large role in determining which species colonize at different times. What I mean by chance is like a bird from another area could fly over and poop, drop a seed in its poop, and then you're going to have a whole bunch of whatever that was. Maybe it wasn't there before. It's chance. So our objective 2 was to compare succession after natural disturbances with succession after human-caused disturbance. And secondary succession in healthy ecosystems follow natural disturbances often reproduces the original climax community, but ecosystems may or may not recover from extensive human-caused disturbances. So, can you describe how ecosystems recover from a disturbance? And can you compare succession after a natural disturbance with succession after a human-caused disturbance? We'll talk about in class, but this was a quick lecture, and enjoy the cute picture while I turn off my video. Bye.